Good morning, Prospect. This morning, I want to touch a, a theme that I have been dealing with for a while, and I want to relate a couple of stories out of Genesis. Now, you need to understand that one of my philosophies of theology is that if you get Genesis right, then you pretty much can get everything right after that. If you get Genesis wrong, nothing you will do will ever make sense. I'm not 100% certain I'm correct, but for example, Genesis is not about how God created, it's more about how God did not. Because you remember, this is not a story that's told from the perspective of Adam or Eve or anything like that. This is a story that's told by God to Moses as the children are coming out of Egypt. And so God gives him the creation of the world story, and it's not at all like the Egyptians think. But the story of Noah is an interesting story, and I think there is a parallel to us today. We know that the people on the earth were evil, that God commanded Noah to build the ark, that he did, that God shut he and his 3 sons and their wives and Noah's wife up in the ark with the animals, and then it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And we know that the waters rose for 150 days. So when Noah and his family went into the ark, the world was one way. No matter what you think about it, it was one way. And when they finally landed and opened the door, the world was an entirely different place than it was. And Noah and his 3 sons and their wives had to seek a new way. And then, not very long after the story of Noah, is the story of Abraham. And in the story of Abraham, he is sitting in Ur, which is somewhere over in Mesopotamia. And God says, "Get up and go. I'm going to show you a land that I'm going to give to you." And in faith, Abraham got up and left. And it says that Abraham is 75 years old when he begins this journey. And he's over 100 when Isaac is born. And Abraham doesn't understand what God is doing. He is faithful, he is obedient, but he does not know what God is doing. He just knows that God has called him and he's obedient. So he leaves the land of his fathers, the land of his former faith, and he goes to a place that he knows nothing at all about. And he is blessed. In our world today, I wish I could find it right now, but somewhere I have a book on planning a new church. And it talks about the fact that before you plant a new church, you need to look at the needs of the community. And for example, if there's already a food bank, you don't need to start a food bank. You need to look and identify the things that the community needs. And I firmly believe that we are in a very similar situation to starting and planning a new church. The world that we left a year ago doesn't exist anymore. It's been washed away. And so there are some questions that I want you to ask. And it's going to determine what we do. So, what is the same in the world that we now live in, and what has changed? What do we need to stop doing? And what do we need to start doing, or what do we need to add? What if we literally had just planted or just acquired, however you want to say it, but if we were new here today, what are the things that Prospect would be doing if it had never existed before? What does the church need to look like post-coronavirus? And I know that there are an awful lot of you who want and are ready for things to go back to the way they were. And I'm sorry that I'm the one telling you, but they're not ever going to go back to the way they were. We may, and we have started going back out to eat again, but very honestly, my wife sent me a text that said E.T. had a list of the 10 movies that we need to go see. And my response to her was, when will those come on TV? Because I'm not sure when I'm ready to go back into a movie theater. For a lot of reasons, not all have anything to do with coronavirus. But it's just undeniable, folks, that our world is new. And we can moan and cry and whimper, and that's not going to change the fact that the world is different. And we need to be asking ourselves the questions right now. What are we doing now that there's a preacher phrase, and I know some of you are not going to like it, but what ministries do we have that we need to give a good Christian burial? And we need to honor them because they were purposeful and profitable and productive at one time. And what ministries are we not doing that we should be doing? And we need to examine this really closely. And it does not need to be just the leadership. I want to hear from everybody. We're starting a small group for 25 and up. And I hope it's very successful. But, and I will use myself as an example, so I'm not being critical of anyone. I'm 63 years old. It is 38 years since I was 25. 38 years ago. Let's see, I was 25 in 1982. Ronald Reagan had been president for a year. I don't know if he'd been shot yet. Cell phones hadn't been invented. Computers hadn't been portable computers hadn't been invented. TVs, if the biggest TV we had at the time was a 26-inch console, and I look and my laptop is now a 17-inch console. But the world that I lived in at 25 has no relationship whatsoever to the world that 25-year-olds are living in now. So I need help from the 25-year-olds. What is it we need to do? What are we doing? Or what are we not doing? And it's the same thing with our youth group. I know Travis and Rachel are pouring their hearts into it. But everybody in the world gets tunnel visioned. We start and we're fighting the good fight, and sometimes we don't realize that the battlefield has changed. So recognize that we are lost in a brave new world, but also recognize that we're still called to be the church, but we don't have to be the church we were yesterday. Folks, I love you. I want to help you on this journey into the new insanity, and I'm proud to be able to say I'm one of the people who has called Prospect home as their pastor. God bless you all.